Spanish interpretation today. So if you can follow the directions on this slide, whether you're an English speaker or a Spanish speaker, you'll need to select your section for which language you would like. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's it almost looks like a little globe for interpretation, and that's where you will select either English or Spanish. Also, as a reminder, once we have the presentation going, if you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A. As a reminder, as we have more people coming in, please refer to the slide on your screen for your language selection. We are offering Spanish interpretation in the Spanish channel. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's an interpretation option. Looks like a little globe almost. That will allow you to select either English or Spanish. Either way, you need to select your preferred language. That way you can hear the presentation. Any questions that you have during the presentation for Tom can go in the Q&A. If you are connecting by your phone, you may have trouble accessing the interpretation. If you call in, I don't believe it will give you the option. And if you're on your phone on the Zoom app, it may not function properly if you can access it via a computer. But you should be able to click on that globe and select it. If a lot of people are having trouble, we can stop and then restart that interpretation. Okay, it looks like some people are now able to access it. We will have a recording. If you're not able to access the Spanish translation, the session on Monday will be recorded in Spanish, and we will post those recordings so you can go back and get more information on that. The chat is disabled. If you have any questions, please ask them in the Q&A. That's where Tom will answer the questions throughout the presentation. And then on a cell phone, someone has informed us that it might look like 3 dots, not the globe that you see on your screen. You might have to go to more settings. Okay, the time is now 10:06, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I know we'll still have some more people coming in, but I want to give Ed a chance to introduce Tom. So let me stop sharing.
Good morning and welcome. Welcome. I'm Ed Gresco, Director of CSCA Voice Child Care Programs. And up here on the panel with me today is Jessica Havens from the Early Care and Learning Council, which is the statewide child care council. John Barberia, did I do it right, John? He's the Spanish interpreter. Pam Wells, president. She's disappeared for a moment, but I'm sure she'll be right back. Today's webinar is third in a series presented by the New York State Partnership, which is the CCR&Rs of New York State, the UFT, the Teachers Union in New York City, WEDCO, which is an agency in New York City, and of course, CSCA Voice. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce Tom Copeland, the nationally recognized expert on the business of family child care. He's going to talk to you today about retirement and how you can possibly use your stabilization money to either start a retirement account or add to your retirement fund. And with that, take it away, Tom.
Okay, I need host sharing. I need to be able to share my screen, so I can't do that as of yet. So let me know. I'm coming to you from my home office in St. Paul, Minnesota, where it's a gorgeous day. Here we go. Let's get my screen up and get the slideshow going. Okay, so there we are. Thank you. Thanks, Ed. So this is one of my favorite topics, talk about how to better manage your money to save it, in particular for retirement. And let me just right off the bat say something about the stabilization grants. Stabilization grants that you're receiving, you can use to pay yourself. And once you pay yourself by writing a check, transferring money to another account, designating this money as money for yourself, which you can do in part or all of it. Once you pay yourself, then you can turn around and invest money in your retirement, as we're going to be talking about. So this is an opportunity that you have that you might not have saved a lot before, and this is a good opportunity to save for retirement now. We're going to be looking at how to better manage your money in general, increase the amount that you're saving for both short and long-term goals. Talk a little bit about debt and what kind of debt is good debt and what kind of debt is bad debt. How to save money in particular for retirement and investing in the individual retirement accounts that are available to you as a child care provider. And we'll also say something about Social Security benefits, when is the best time to collect benefits and how to find that out. And lastly, I'll say a few words about meeting financial goals in general. I'm an attorney. I've been working on the business side of family child care for many, many years, trying to help child care providers be more successful as a business. And in addition to doing webinars, I answer questions. If you have questions after today about what I'm talking about or about any other aspect of your business, feel free to give me a call. Here's my number. Send me an email. I don't charge anything for answering questions. Your questions might be answered on my website, tomcopelandblog.com, where I've posted hundreds of articles on all aspects of the business side of family childcare. I'm also on Facebook. Every time I post an article on my website, it will appear on my Facebook page. I've written a book on money management and retirement. Somebody's already asked the question, does it count as paying yourself if you move it from a checking to a savings account? Yes. If you're moving money from the grant from one account to another, checking to checking, checking to savings, it doesn't matter. Whenever you're moving the money, you want to keep your own notes that say, this is paying myself. If you go to my website, I've written an article, how to pay yourself using this money. And you'll see it right across the top of the home page. As we're going along, if you do have questions, post them in the Q&A box, and I'll be monitoring them as we go along. I'm not your financial planner. I'm not providing you with individual professional advice. So let us begin and talk about how to better manage your money. In the course of doing the research on my book, I did a survey of over 500 providers across the country. And most providers are not doing well financially. Very few have saved enough money for any kind of an emergency fund. Many have thousands of dollars of credit card debt. Very few were saving any significant amount for their retirement. At the same time, there are some providers who are doing well. Even during this pandemic, some providers are doing very well, but most are struggling. When I first thought about writing my book, I realized that most providers aren't making a lot of money. And I thought the first chapter maybe should be about how to increase your income. But I realized that that was not a good idea, because in general, over the course of our lives, we earn a little bit more money. But at the same time, we're spending more money. So if we look back at when we first graduated from high school or college, we probably made a lot less. We probably spent a lot less. So just increasing your income now is not going to make a difference if your spending keeps going up, because we want more money set aside for savings. Therefore, the first step in getting more control over your money is to look at your spending. The exercise that I would urge you to follow is to track your family's expenses for at least a month and put them into these two categories of a fixed expense or a flexible expense. Fixed expenses are those things you don't have any control over. Mortgage, property tax, rent, gas, insurance, car loan payments, credit card payments, utilities, and so on. Flexible expenses are things you have some control over. Food, clothing, gas, vacation, entertainment, cable TV, charitable contributions, and so on. What usually happens with most people is when the month begins, you start spending money. And if there's any money left over at the end of the month, we call it savings. But most people don't have much of anything left over at the end of the month. And so most people aren't saving. Therefore, the first thing you want to do here is to pick a very modest savings goal. $50 a month, $100 a month, something that you feel pretty confident that you could save, and make that a fixed expense. At the first of the month, deposit $50 or $100 or whatever you can into a savings account. As the month goes on, if you start to run out of money, you have to cut something from the flexible expense category. Now, your flexible expenses could be different, will be different than every other person. I would have a category of books. I like to spend money on books. One provider said she likes to spend money on shoes. So if you have to cut something, it's up to you what you want to cut from your list. If it's me, I'm not cutting books. I'll cut food or entertainment. It's up to you. Most providers would find that it's not that difficult if you force yourself to save. It's not that difficult to cut something from what you're spending money on now. The next thing to look at is the fixed expenses, those things that will be a little bit more easily manageable. Credit card debt, car loan interest. Paying interest makes it more difficult to save. So ideally, you don't want credit card debt. You don't want car loan payments. And that's something that I would try to work on to reduce some fixed expenses so you'll have more money to save. You also want to look at your spending, because if you're spending more than you are earning, that may be true for a month here or there, but you can't sustain that. So you need to take a little more drastic action to reduce your spending in that case. The other thing to look at with this exercise is to consider what's important in your life. And are your spending habits in line with your values? The example of this for me was when my wife and I were living in a big house, 6 bedrooms, no kids, 2 cats, but it was cheap and we enjoyed, it was old, it was 100 years old, and we enjoyed fixing it up. We were spending our money fixing up our house, which we enjoyed. But there came a time when I started thinking about this some more and realized that the amount we were spending on our house was no longer in line with what I and my wife thought were important. We then decided we would rather have more money for vacations, for an earlier retirement. And so we then realized we should move. We should downsize to a more modern house that wouldn't cost us as much. Lower property taxes, lower maintenance, less money to spend that we'd have to fix up our house. And that's what we did. So what's important to you, what your values are, could well change over time. They did for my wife and I. And so where you're spending your money is a reflection of what's important to you. And if you're not saving, that means you're saying that savings are not important to you. And that really means that a lot of people aren't matching their spending with their values. So I'm here to encourage you to think about what's important. What are your financial goals? What do you want to achieve financially? And are you on a path to get there? Most people fall into one or two categories: spenders or savers. Savers tend to marry spenders, and spenders tend to marry savers. And the leading cause of divorce is money. When my wife and I got married many years ago, she was a spender, I was a saver. And after we got married, she told me she never balanced her checkbook, ever, have ever done that. And I couldn't understand that. She said, I don't want to know. I don't want to know if I'm off, because I don't want to deal with money. I just don't want to handle money. Our culture encourages us to spend, not to save. Too often, providers are spending money to express their love for children. But I think that's a mistake. You can show your love for children other than buying them treats or toys all the time. Obviously, you can give the kids a hug in the morning. You can tell them you love them. You can express your love without having to spend money. Parents don't want you to spend more money on their kids. In some cases, spending on children can be excessive. And all this spending makes it harder to save. Providers sometimes spend money on children to meet an emotional need. And again, spending might meet your emotional need for a very, very short period of time. But quickly that wears off. So I'm encouraging you to make spending a higher priority. Sorry, savings a higher priority than spending. You can start you can start saving by saving small amounts. Because small amounts of savings over time will get you where you want to go. If you save just $5 a day, 5 days a week, you'll have $1,250 by the end of the year. If you put that money into an individual retirement account, after 10 years, you'll have over $19,000. So it's possible to save some substantial amounts of money. Now, in the book that I did the survey for, providers indicated some things they did to help them save money. Some providers had parents bring them business supplies such as crayons, scissors, construction paper, and so on. And that helped reduce their own spending. One provider had an elaborate birthday party for all the children every year. Everybody got a fancy birthday party. But she realized she was spending a lot of money on those parties. So she decided to now ask parents to bring all the items for the birthday parties. Somebody would bring a cake, somebody would bring decorations, somebody would bring the juice, and so on. And she said the parents were willing to bring these things because they knew that their child was going to get a nice birthday party. So they were willing to help the other children have a similar birthday party. And now this provider is not spending a dime on birthday parties. Another provider said, whenever I get a windfall, I don't spend it, I save it. A windfall is money that you get throughout the year that you didn't expect to get. So it could be a tax refund, it could be a late payment fee, it could be cash somebody gave you for your birthday, whatever. You didn't plan on spending that money, so don't spend it. There are online websites that can help you identify ways to save money around your house. Another provider said, before I decide to buy something from my business, I will ask myself the question, will buying this improve my business or entice parents to come to my program? Because if it does neither, I'm not going to buy it. If it's not going to matter, I'm not going to buy it. And that helps her control her spending. One of the things that I do is that when I'm taking money out of the bank for cash, I don't take out more than $40 unless I'm traveling. And I'm not traveling very much. So I'll take out $40, no more, because I don't want more than $40 in my wallet. The more money you have in your wallet, the more likely it is that you'll spend it. But for me, if I start running out of the money in my wallet, that tells me I can't spend anymore. And I'll have to go back to the bank at some point to get some more money. But I'm deliberately trying to keep my spending down by just not having it. Now, I want to catch up on some questions. And there were some more questions about this stabilization grant and paying yourself. As I said, you can transfer it into another account, even if it's a personal account after you've paid yourself. By paying yourself, you can transfer it into a personal account. If you're writing a check to yourself, you can put in the memo payroll. Everything I'm saying applies whether you're a sole proprietor, whether you're a sole proprietor or an LLC. Everything is the same. Somebody says, I pay myself on payroll through ADP. Should I do it differently with a grant? If you're a corporation and your corporation is paying you a salary, then yes, the paying yourself means you're just getting paid more salary through your normal payroll process. However, if you're self-employed, you should not be paying yourself a payroll through ADP or a payroll service that's withholding Social Security taxes as an employee. If you're self-employed, you're not an employee, and you can just take the money for yourself. You don't run it through payroll. Okay, I've answered that question. Whoops, sorry. Let's see here. Write yourself a check. How long is, yeah. So the stabilization grant in New York lists specific things that you can use the money for if you go onto the New York website. You can't use the money directly for retirement, and you can't use it directly for home improvements or some larger expenses. But you can take part or all of the money to pay yourself directly by putting it in another account. It can be another business account, a personal account, a checking account, a savings account. It doesn't matter. You could transfer the money. You could write yourself a check. You could just leave the money in one bank account and write a note on a piece of paper that says, this money that I'm getting is for paying myself. And once you pay yourself, you can use it for whatever you want. You can use it for retirement. You can use it to go on a vacation. You can buy stuff for your business. You can buy stuff for yourself. And therefore, you won't have to worry about whether or not it's eligible under the New York rules. Because once you pay yourself, you're allowed to do that. And that's all you need to do. Can legally exempt providers get this grant? Only if you are, Ed, can you help me here? I'm not sure what the proper language here is. If you're just caring for 1 or 2 kids in your home and are not licensed, no, you're not eligible for the grant.
No, it's a legally exempt group, which are programs such as before and after school programs in schools, the YWCA, and other types of charitable or agencies that sponsor those types of programs. So
Okay.
a legally exempt provider who's taking care of 2 children, let's say, in their home does not qualify.
Okay. A couple more questions. And you're not seeing the Q&A, only I can see the Q&A. If you pay yourself with the grant, are you going to get it taxed a lot more than if you use the money 100% for your business? Yes, but you're financially better off if you do pay yourself. If you got $10,000 from the grant and spent $10,000 on stuff only used by your business, you would report $10,000 of income and $10,000 of expense. You're wiping out all that income. There's no additional taxes, and you don't have any money left over because you've spent it all. If you take the $10,000 and pay yourself and don't spend it all on your business, you're going to pay taxes on the $10,000. But after you pay the taxes on the $10,000, you'll have more money left over in your hands than if you spent it all. So if you need to spend the money on your business, there are important things that will improve the quality of your program, and you want to spend it, you need to spend it on your business, okay, fine. But don't look around for something to buy money with this, to spend money with this grant just because you want to keep your taxes lower. That does not make sense. So keeping the money, not spending it, you'll end up with more money at the end of the year than if you spend it. All right. Somebody says, I was told by an accountant that I have to run payroll for myself, even though I'm self-employed. I have a C corporation. Well, if you have a C corporation, you're not self-employed. If you are a C corporation or an S corporation or a nonprofit corporation or a limited liability company that is an S or C corporation, you have to be treated as an employee, and your corporation is withholding payroll taxes. And this grant money would have to pay yourself, would have to be run through payroll and all those payroll taxes. You're self-employed, you're not an employee, and you can just pay yourself. You do not have to be incorporated to pay yourself being self-employed. Once you pay yourself, you don't have to keep any records for the grant on how you spent the money, because it's your money now, and you've already told the state that you paid yourself. However, whenever you buy something for your business, you always want to keep the receipts. And if you are spending it directly on utilities or other supplies, operating expenses with the grant money, then yes, you need to keep records for that. But the state is not going to ask you to submit any receipts. The saving of these records for how you spent the grant money is only going to be important when you file your taxes, or if the state audits you under this grant program. All right. I'm looking at these questions. Okay. All right. So let's now keep moving and talk about short-term savings goals. When you're saving some money, the first question you want to ask then is, what am I saving this money for? When do I need the money? If you need the money within about 5 years, we call this a short-term savings goal. It could be to create or fund an emergency fund, or buy a car, or make a down payment on a home, or make a home improvement. Something that you need within the next 5 years. If you're saving money for these things, your goal is to preserve the money. You don't want to take risks with it. You want it readily accessible. So if there's an emergency, or if your car breaks down, you need to be able to get to the money quickly and not have to worry that its value went down. You want to save the money in a place that's going to preserve it and not take risks with it. You want a low risk place to put it, and that means you're not going to earn very much interest. It's going to be a low return. You don't want it in the stock market because that's high risk. Well, here are some options of where you could put your money when you're saving it for something that you need within 5 years. You could put it in a bank savings account. It's very, very low interest, less than 0.5%, lower than that. There's no risk because deposits in your bank are insured. You cannot lose money there. There's no penalty for taking it out as soon as you want it. And if you want to go online and put this in a bank account online, you could look at ingdirect.com, which will show you some online banks where you can get probably a little bit higher interest rate. Your second option is a money market fund. A money market fund earns a little bit more than a bank savings account. A money market fund is a fund that invests in government securities. It's very, very low risk. Again, low return, no penalty for taking it out early, but the deposits are not insured. But in 20, 30, 40 years, nobody has lost money by putting it in a money market fund. Number 3, a certificate of deposit, a CD. This is also low risk. You can invest in a 1-year CD, a 2-year, a 5-year, a 10-year. You're going to get a little bit more interest than the first 2 options. There is an early withdrawal penalty. So if you're investing in a 5-year CD and you need the money after 3 years, there's going to be a little penalty. You're going to lose a little bit of the money. A CD is insured. In other words, you will never lose money by putting it there. The last option is what we call a short-term bond fund, which has a potential of earning more interest than these other options. No early withdrawal penalty. Deposits are not insured. And so those are the 4 options. Which one should you choose? The money market fund, the short-term bond funds are more flexible with a higher rate of return compared to the other options. If you don't need money for at least a year or more, then a CD, a short-term bond fund, a CD, a 1-year CD that is, or a short-term bond fund can give you a higher rate of return. Now, if these concepts are not familiar to you, then you could just, the simplest way is leave money in your bank until you know a little bit more about what these other options are. And the next step you could take is a money market fund. Your bank might have a money market fund. You could go online and search money market fund, and you'll see a lot of options. That would be the next step if you're just learning about these choices. All right, let me just see, whoops. I want to catch up on any questions. Is a sole proprietor the same as self-employed? Yes. Let's see. When you transfer the grant money to yourself, how does that become personal W-2 income affecting your personal tax picture, earned income credit, child tax credit, and so on? If you're sole proprietor, if you're self-employed, any money that you get is yours. When you get the grant, it's yours. Now, what are you going to do with it? You can buy items that you are eligible to purchase with the grant money, or just simply pay yourself. When you're paying yourself, it has the same effect as if the parents paid you. In other words, it's now business income. It's business income. And your profit from your business then has to do with your personal tax return and whether you're eligible for the earned income credit or child tax credits. So again, money you take for yourself, you're going to pay taxes on, but you'll have more money left over. And that's the best financial decision you can make, rather than trying to find things to spend the money on. If you, don't spend money to try to reduce your taxes. I want to purchase a refrigerator. Can you use it with the grant money? Yes. Can you write it off? Yes. Can you pay yourself first and then buy the refrigerator and write it off? Yes, it would. It's the same thing. It wouldn't make any difference if you did it that way. You're able to write off the business portion of the refrigerator. All right. How much money can you put into a CD account in a year? As much as you want. There's no limit on how much you can put into a CD. What is the difference between an insured account or an uninsured account? An insured account means the government is guaranteeing that you won't lose money, meaning if you put it in a bank and the bank goes under, you still get your money. The government will still make sure you get your money. If somebody robs the bank, you're still going to get your money. It's not going to be lost. If it's uninsured, that means there's the potential that it could lose money. If you put it in a bond fund, it's possible that when you want to take it out, it is less in value, and it's possible you could lose some money. I always recommend that people stay self-employed unless you are a childcare center or you have some specific reasons for why you want to be incorporated. And if you want to contact me, I can talk about that in more detail. It's a complicated decision for most everybody who's family childcare and even group family childcare. In my opinion, self-employed is the best. Yes, if you already have set up a retirement plan, I'm going to talk about the different options. And you can put a lot of money, over $16,000, into your own IRA. You can increase the amount you're putting into your 401k plan, and we'll talk about the other IRA options. So yes, you can put more money in there. All right. Okay, we'll talk about, we're going to get to that. For bank, is there a limit on what's insured? Yeah, I think it's several hundreds of thousands of dollars is insured. So I don't even remember the number because most providers don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars in their bank account. There's no limit on what you can pay yourself with the stabilization money. When I talk about writing off expenses, that means claiming deductions, buying things that are used by your business that can reduce your taxable income. All right, so, all right, let's go. Talking about debt. My father always said to me that there were three things you should borrow money for, but only three: a house, a home improvement, and education. And he would call that acceptable debt, because over time, those three things will increase in value. And so it makes sense to borrow money for those things. But for virtually everything else that you buy, it will decrease in value over time. And so therefore, you should never borrow money for something that's decreasing in value. That means paying cash for everything else except a house, a home improvement, and education. Credit card debt. If you're not paying off your credit card in full at the end of each month, in my opinion, it's a sign of overspending. Now, I should also say that since I'm not your financial planner, you don't have to agree with what I'm saying. If you don't like what I'm saying, if somebody's told you something different, that's okay. But you want to educate yourself about these things if you're not understanding completely what I'm saying. But don't just take what I'm saying without doing some of your own research, because people can say different things. But this is my opinion. Paying credit card interest, you're paying about 15 to 20% in interest. And that interest makes it more difficult to save. if you look back last year at what you paid in interest on your credit cards, that could have been money for your retirement. Having high monthly balances on your credit cards that you're not paying off in full will make your credit rating go down. If you want to borrow money for a car or a mortgage or a home equity loan, you're going to pay higher interest on that loan. If you had a $5,000 balance on your credit card and you're paying 18% interest, and you're only making the minimum monthly payment, it'll take you 30 years to pay it off, and you'll have paid over $17,500. And this is obviously crazy. Credit cards are a convenience, but you want to make sure you're not paying any credit card interest. If you are in debt to your credit cards, try not to go any further into debt. Try to pay off at least your current monthly expenses. If you have a store credit card, a retail store credit card, you're likely to spend more money with that card. So I would reduce the number of retail store credit cards you might have. My wife and I have a Target credit card, and I think that's it. If you're paying a high interest rate on your credit card, you could call up the company and ask them to reduce your rate, because you could shop around online for a lower interest rate. And sometimes companies will reduce your interest payment just by asking. If you're going to use a debit card, debit cards act like a check, which is good, but we want to not pay any overdraft fees. We want to not pay fees. So if you're using debit cards, you want to make sure that you're paying, that you have enough money in your account to pay these off as they come up. If you are in debt and need more help, Debt Reduction Services is a nonprofit organization that can provide help. If you want to prioritize your debt, you've got credit card debt, car loan debt, mortgage, student loan. Now what? You could focus on paying off the highest interest rate first, which would be your credit cards. And that might be okay, but you don't want to take 3 years to do that and then go back as soon as you paid it off to start racking up debt again. You could pay off the smallest debt first. Maybe that's the car loan interest. And some people do that to encourage them, to reward them, to feel better after paying off one debt and now move on to the next one. There's no right or wrong about which debt you pay off first. You always want to pay off credit cards before you start paying off your mortgage faster. If you're concerned about whether you should pay off credit card debt or contribute to an IRA, I would do a little bit of both. If you're only going to pay off credit cards, that could be a year or 2 years before you can do it. And meantime, you're not getting the advantage, the tax advantage of an IRA. If you use all the money to contribute to an IRA and not pay off the credit cards, you're paying a lot of interest that is going to hurt you because you won't have as much to put away for retirement. So I'd say do a little bit of each year. If you need further help, there are credit counseling services that can provide you with more help. Go through your United Way to identify the one near you. Let me try to catch up with some questions. The question again about being an LLC or sole proprietor. In my experience, be a sole proprietor. If you go online, I'll go to my website. I've written about this a lot. I've written a book, Family Childcare Legal and Insurance Guide, which has several chapters about incorporations and the choices and why a sole proprietor is almost always best. Can a sole proprietor pay an assistant by check weekly and give them a 1099 at the end of the year? No. If you're hiring somebody to help you care for children, you must treat that person as an employee, not as an independent contractor. And this can get you into big trouble, particularly in New York, because if you're not purchasing workers' compensation for the person who's helping you care for children, you are taking a big risk. If that person ever gets injured, you're going to have to pay their entire medical bill, and they're going to go back for all the years that person worked for you and make you pay penalties and make you purchase the insurance going back. It's going to be a real disaster. So you absolutely do not want to issue 1099s for assistants. They have to be your employees. If you haven't been treating them as an employee, you need to start doing it right away. If you're an LLC, a single person LLC, there's different kinds of LLCs. You can pay yourself just like if you're self-employed. If you're a corporate LLC, you have to pay yourself through salary as an employee of the corporation. If you're a sole proprietor, you don't have to worry about all that. You're just taking the money for yourself. Yeah, if you're self-employed, you're responsible for everything. And if a child is injured and a parent sues you, they can come after your business assets, your savings or checking accounts, your business property, and your personal assets, your personal savings, your house, your property. That's a risk if you're self-employed. If you incorporate, that could provide you some protection where they can only sue you for your business property. But being self-employed, you can protect yourself by getting a lot of insurance. Even if you're incorporated, you want a lot of insurance. Business liability insurance. That's what will protect you if you are sued. And you can get that by being self-employed. Okay. Yeah, okay. Does it make sense to transfer your credit card balance to a lower interest rate card, or is it bad for your credit to open up a new credit card account? If you're going to transfer your credit card to a lower interest rate, don't cut up the old card. Just keep it. By canceling credit cards, that could have an effect on your credit score. So don't, just hold on to it. And now use the new credit card. I'm saying calling up a credit card company to say, I'm now paying 18% interest. Can you lower my interest rate to 15%? You want to lower the interest rate that you're paying on your existing credit card by calling your credit card company and asking them to lower it. They don't have to, but they might. And if they won't, then you might want to shop around for a lower interest rate. But the ultimate goal is to not pay any credit card interest. You pay yourself with a grant and then buy everything you need for the childcare, can you still deduct it? Yes, you get $10,000 from the grant. You pay yourself $10,000. You always have to report the grant as income, whether you pay yourself or not. But now after paying yourself, you buy stuff for your business. Refrigerators, rugs, children's toys, whatever, and you can deduct those things after paying yourself. Yes. I have an insurance directory on my website where you can see which insurance companies are in New York and what kind of, and these are companies that offer liability insurance, homeowners insurance, car insurance for family child care providers. If you're a sole proprietor and hire somebody to help you care for children, you must purchase workers' compensation for that person. You don't need to be a corporation to hire somebody. You can hire somebody by being self-employed. Is an assistant who works 2 days a week considered an employee? Yes. 1 day a week? Yes. 1 day a year? That's an employee. If you hire a person for 1 day and they fall down and break their leg and you don't have workers' compensation insurance, you're in big trouble. So the first day they work for you, you need compensation insurance. Somebody's going from family to group. Should you still be a sole proprietor? In my opinion, yes. Are there negatives for having a credit card but not using it? You just have it for emergencies. No, there aren't any negatives. I have a second credit card that I only use in emergency. If somehow something's wrong with my first card, I've got a backup. I never ever use it once every couple years, maybe. If you get the grant money, it's a certain amount of time that you have to keep your daycare open. I don't know the answer to that question. You'd have to contact the state. I'll show you my website at the end that will list to show you how to find the insurance directory. I purchased a TV for the center and paid with a credit card. Can I pay back the credit card bill with the grant money? Yes. If my daughter does daycare for me, can I give her a 1099? No. If she's 18 or older, you have to withhold Social Security tax. You have to treat her as an employee for Social Security tax purposes, and you'll need workers' compensation insurance for her. If she's under age 18, you don't have to withhold Social Security tax, but you still would need workers' compensation insurance for her. So you never give your own child a 1099. The grant money, if the grant money comes in one lump sum, can we pay ourselves weekly till we use it up? Yes. Or you can pay yourself all at once. Paying employees involves a number of federal and state rules. Paying an employee who's not a family member, you got to withhold Social Security, Medicare taxes. You got to pay federal and state unemployment tax. You got to withhold federal and state income tax. You need to pay them at least the minimum wage. You need to purchase workers' compensation insurance. You need to file quarterly payroll tax forms and annual payroll tax forms. If you go on my website, I talk about this. It's a lot, but you have to do it all. If I only have a checking account, how do I pay myself? If you don't have another account, then just make a note to yourself. Write down a note. August 15th, received $15,000 from the stabilization grant. I'm allocating $15,000, $10,000, $5,000 to pay myself. And you keep that note. That's it. Or transfer it to another account. Yes, my website has a lot of information about employees and workers' compensation insurance. When is the best time to file for forgiveness on the SBA loan? At least 11 weeks after you got the money. And if you go to my website and search for an article, PPP forgiveness, I describe this in detail. All right, I'm going to move on. Let's talk about saving money for retirement, and then I'll come back to these questions. You've got a little bit of money. You want to save something for retirement. When is the best time to start saving money for your retirement? Today. When is the next best day? Tomorrow. The sooner you start saving money for your retirement, the better. And saving small amounts of money over time will get you where you want to go. So don't hesitate to save a little bit now. Here's the example. We all know that money grows over time. Faye and Fred are twins. Faye starts saving for her retirement at age 35. She saves $2,000 a year for 10 years. She's saved a total of $20,000. Let's just pretend that her money earns 8% a year. There's no guarantee here, but let's just pretend that her money earns 8% each year. After 30 years, she'll have $135,000. Her twin brother waits 10 years before he starts saving at age 45. He saves $2,000 a year for 20 years, and he's saved $40,000. His money also earns 8%. After 30 years, Faye has $135,000. He only has $91,000. He saved twice as much money, but he has a third less money because he waited. That's the problem, waiting. We don't worry about what the stock market is doing or who's president or anything. You just save money now over a period of time. And that's what will reach your goals. When I asked providers in my survey, what did they do to help them save money? One provider said, you got to develop the savings habit. That is, putting money aside, even if it's a little bit of money, each month. Get into a habit, once a month, once a month. One provider said at the beginning of the year, she would look around at the kids and pick one child. And she would say, that's my retirement baby. And all the money I'm going to get from that child this year is going to go into my retirement. Another provider said, I put the food program check into my retirement, or half the food program check into my retirement. Some providers say, I just make direct deposits into my retirement account. In other words, from her bank account, her checking account, it automatically goes into a retirement fund every month so that she doesn't have to remember to put money aside. And it's kind of like paying yourself first, that money goes into savings before anything else. Another provider said she would dedicate any extra money to her retirement. The windfall, the registration fees from parents, the late pickup fees, the supply fees, the you're giving me a headache fee, it would all go into her retirement. Ideally, you want to be putting money aside early in the year rather than later in the year. If you're putting aside money each month, terrific. Keep doing that. But don't wait until December to put money into your retirement for that year. If you're putting money aside earlier in the year, it's going to earn more interest. And over 10, 20, 30 years, that makes a difference. The earlier the better. How much do you need to save for retirement? Most providers aren't saving enough. Everybody is not saving enough. Experts say we're going to need maybe 70 to 80% of our current income in retirement. That means if you want to sustain the same standard of living that you have today, you're going to need about 70 to 80% of what you have today. That's because when you retire, you'll have, in general, lower housing expenses, lower transportation, less money on clothing, and so on. However, higher expenses for healthcare. Maybe you're going to eat out more. Maybe you want to travel more, okay? But in general, you're going to spend less as you get older in retirement. Now, women need to save more money than men. Women live longer. My mother lived to be 96. Women tend to earn less over their life, and therefore their Social Security benefit in general is going to be less than men. Women tend to have more medical expenses because they live longer. So saving in an IRA that we're going to talk about is even more important for women. How can you figure out how much you need to save? I would suggest looking at some of these retirement calculators online. You'll enter in information. What's your age? How much are you making now? How much do you want in retirement? And they'll go through Social Security, and it will say how much you need to save each month now to reach your goal. And I like the first one the best, this ballpark estimating, but there's several others that are good. I would be a little cautious in using these calculators because when you get to the end, it's possible that it'll say, oh, you need to save $900 a month. And you'll go, I can't do that. Well, the calculators are flexible. So you'd say, well, what if I worked a little longer? What if I lived on a little bit less? How would that change? Okay, now I only need to save $400 a month. I don't know, whatever it might say to you. But it's worthwhile taking a look at it to get an idea of what you need to do to reach a retirement goal. What do most people do when they retire? They tend to need to work longer before they can actually retire, or they work part-time. That's why we see a lot of people saying to us, welcome to Walmart. Would you like fries with that? And these are people who are of retirement age, who are probably collecting Social Security, but still need to do some work. Also, people just decide to live on less. You're going to live in retirement on the money that you have in retirement. So we want to make sure that you have as best a life, financial life as possible in retirement. You need to educate yourself about this. You need to take responsibility for your retirement planning. Don't take any steps if you don't understand it. When I'm going to talk about these IRAs, or if I talk about money market funds or short-term bond funds, if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't do it until you find out. The best book that I would recommend to start getting a handle on money is called Personal Finance for Dummies. There's on Amazon, Eric Tyson. It's a great book. It's simple to understand, and it's excellent. You might look into taking some financial planning classes that might be offered by your community college or through your library or someplace else, a one-night or 2 or 3 night class on Social Security or financial planning or retirement. I would take advantage of those opportunities because they will have usually a lot of information, written information, that they're passing out. You might want to join an investment club. There are lots of resources on the internet. These are some places that I think have a lot of good information. Now let's talk about the particular individual retirement accounts. An IRA is the biggest tax benefit you'll get in your life. It allows you to postpone paying taxes on interest that you're earning, which is a big deal over many years. You can invest in an IRA that invests in almost anything, stocks, bonds, real estate. You pick a fund and you label it, this is my IRA, to get the tax benefit of that investment. You make a contribution, you put some money in. As I said, you can invest in almost anything. You'll get an immediate tax deduction by putting this money in. It'll help reduce your personal taxable income, except for the Roth IRA, which is different, and I'll explain that in a minute. When you put the money into this IRA fund, it earns interest, and it's tax deferred. You don't pay tax on the interest every year. When you take the money out of an IRA, as early as age 59 and a half, you're going to pay tax on the contribution, and you're going to pay tax on the interest. Again, the exception is the Roth IRA. Here's the significant benefit of an IRA. Let's say you invest $5,000 a year for each year for 20 years, and then it earns 8%. If you just put money in a fund that is not labeled as your IRA, that you don't get the tax benefit, you're going to have about $129,000. If you put the money in an IRA and label it an IRA and take advantage of the tax benefit for it being an IRA, you're going to have about $164,000. Plus, you are getting this tax deduction each year. So why not put your retirement money in an IRA? You want the vast majority of your retirement savings in one of these kind of IRAs that I'm going to talk about. And here are the 4 types of IRAs that are most common. The first is called a regular IRA. And if you're married and your spouse has a retirement plan at work, then you're eligible for this if your adjusted gross income is less than $125,000. That means your profit plus your spouse's gross income. If it's less than that amount, you're eligible for a regular IRA. If your spouse doesn't have a retirement plan at work, or you're not married, you're eligible. Well, let's see. If you're married, you can do an IRA if your income is less than $208,000 when there's no retirement plan at work. Or if you're single, it doesn't matter how much you earn, you are eligible for this regular IRA. You can put up to $6,000 a year per person, you, your spouse. If you're age 50 or older, you can contribute an extra $1,000 a year. You don't have to contribute $6,000 in the first year. You don't have to contribute any amount in the second or third or fourth year. But the maximum you can contribute is $6,000 or $7,000. When you put the money in, you get a tax deduction. If you put $2,000 in the first year, your personal taxable income goes down by $2,000. You're going to save money on your federal tax return and your state tax return. When you take the money out after you retire, you're going to pay tax on the contribution and on the interest. The second example is a simple IRA. There's no income eligibility limits. You can make as much money as you want. Your husband can make as much money as he wants. The maximum you can contribute is up to $13,500 of your profit. Any contribution to an IRA cannot exceed your profit. If you're age 50 or older, you can contribute another $3,000. It's tax deductible. You pay taxes on it later, just like a regular IRA. If you have employees and you set up a simple IRA, depending on how much the employee is earning and how long they've worked for you, you may have to contribute something to your employee's simple IRA. Third option, a simplified employee pension, an SEP. No income eligibility limits. You can make as much as you want. The maximum you can contribute, however, is only about 18.5% of your profit. So if your profit is $10,000, you can only contribute $1,800 to a SEP IRA. If your profit is $20,000, you can only contribute about $3,600. So as you can see, the SEP IRA only makes sense if your profit is $70,000, $80,000 or more to be able to contribute more to a SEP than you could to a simple IRA. You pay taxes on, you get a tax deduction on the contribution, you pay taxes later. Now, it's too late to set up a simple IRA for 2021 because the deadline was October 1st. But you can set up a simple IRA for 2022. The last kind of IRA is called a Roth IRA. If you're married and filing jointly, your profit and your spouse's gross income has to be less than $208,000. If you're single, your profit has to be less than $140,000. Several years ago, I was in Brooklyn doing a training, and a provider came up to me and said, "I'm single and I'm not eligible for the Roth IRA. What should I do?" She was making a profit of more than about $140,000. If you are making a profit of more than $140,000 as a single provider, give me a call. I want to write a story about you. The maximum you can contribute to a Roth is $6,000 or another $1,000 if you're age 50 or older. Now, here's the difference. When you put money into a Roth IRA, you do not get a tax deduction. It earns interest. When you take the money out, you're not going to pay tax on what you contributed because you've already paid tax on them, but you will not pay tax on any of the interest that it earned over the course of time. And if you're saving for 20, 30, 40 years for your retirement, all that interest is not ever taxed. And the Roth IRA, I think, has a lot of advantages because there's, for all the other IRAs, there's penalties if you take it out earlier than age 59 and a half. With the Roth IRA, you don't have those penalties. When you retire, you're going to take money from Social Security. You're going to pay tax on most of what you get from Social Security. If you take money out of any other IRA, you're going to pay tax on them. If you are still earning some money, part-time work or something, you're going to owe tax on that. If you're entitled to get a pension, you're going to get taxed on that. So when you're retired, you're going to pay more in taxes than you might think. But if some of the money in your retirement is a Roth IRA, you can take that money out with no taxes, and it can help you keep your tax bracket lower. So I like the Roth IRA. What else? If I said to you, the marshmallow study, would you know what I'm talking about? Google marshmallow study and you'll see what I mean. It was a study done in the 1960s, I think out of Stanford University. They brought preschoolers into a room and put them in front of a table. They put a marshmallow in front of them and they said, I'm going to leave the room. When I come back, if the marshmallow is still here, I'll give you another one. And they left for a very short period of time and they came back. I filmed the children and it's hilarious. Some of the kids eat the marshmallow right away. Some of the kids smell it and they lick it and they agonize about it. It's very funny. They've tracked these kids for 40 some years. Among other things, the children who did not eat the marshmallow were significantly better off financially. They had more wealth. They were earning more money. They had a higher education. Why? Delayed gratification, self-control is a significant factor in financial success and in success in life in general. In my opinion, people who put money into a Roth IRA are the kind of people who did not eat the marshmallow. They're giving up a benefit today. They don't get a tax benefit now, but they get a bigger tax benefit later. So I like the Roth a lot. Now, what else? If you're married, your spouse may have a retirement plan through their work, a 401k plan, a 403b plan. In my opinion, your first financial decision should be to make the maximum contribution to the employer's 401k plan if the employer is making a match, a 1%, a 2% match. If the employer is contributing to your spouse's retirement plan, you want to make sure he's contributing as much as he possibly can to get the maximum match, because that's free money. If you've made the maximum match, then in my opinion, you should contribute to a Roth IRA. If you have more money to contribute, I would contribute either to a more money into the 401k plan or into a simple IRA. Now, people asked about a childcare program or a self-employed provider setting up their own 401k plan. You can do an individual 401k plan. I hesitate to recommend that. The advantage of that is you can contribute a lot more to your retirement. Most people don't have that much money to contribute. And the problem with an individual 401k plan are fees, the fees associated with that. And rather do a Roth IRA, you can do a Roth IRA and a simple IRA. So that's that could be over $20,000 right there each year that you could contribute. And that's more than most providers are able to contribute every year. Savers credit is a credit for low income taxpayers, including low income providers. It's a double tax benefit. You make a contribution to an IRA, you get a tax deduction, and if you're eligible for this, you get another tax credit on top of that. In order to be eligible for this Savers credit, You have to be low income. So if you're married, your profit and your spouse's gross income has to be less than $66,000. If you're single, your profit has to be less than $33,000. You can contribute up to $2,000 per person to any IRA. And depending on how low your family's income is, you can get a tax credit of 10, 20, or 50%. So if you contribute $2,000, the most you could get is a $1,000 tax credit. That means your taxes are going down by $1,000, and you get the tax deduction for that contribution as well. All right, before I go on, let me try to pick up some of these other expenses. If I have somebody cut my grass, is that an employee? No. Somebody who is not caring for children is not an employee. Cutting your grass, plowing your driveway with snow, cleaning your house. Those people are independent contractors. You do not have to treat them as employee. What if I pay off all my credit cards? How would that affect you? That's good. You're not paying any interest. And so that's terrific. Your credit score will be higher. You'll have more money to save by not paying credit card interest. So that's what you want to do. I have 4 employees and only 2 are on the books. The other 2 refuse to go on the books. So I only pay workers' comp for them. Is this too risky? Yes. What could happen? You can get audited. Now they can force you to pay the 100% of all the Social Security tax and Medicare tax you should have paid. They'll make you pay federal unemployment, state unemployment tax, and there are penalties for this. So it's a risk. Okay, you have workers' compensation insurance. That's good. That's the most important thing. But you could still get into trouble if they are ever audited or you are ever audited. I should have said also, if you have a SEP IRA and an employee, you also may have to contribute to the SEP's, your employees' SEP IRA and make a contribution. Yes. If you go to my website and search, where should I invest my money? Where should I invest my money? I have an article about this. The short answer is Vanguard, Fidelity are the 2 largest retirement companies where you can choose to invest your money. And where you want to invest your money, in my opinion, is in what's called an index fund, INDEX, an index fund, because those funds have the lowest fees. And my book explains this in a lot of detail. On my website, there's a whole section that says retirement, money management, retirement. I've written a lot about it there. Vanguard.com, Fidelity.com would be where I would tell you to put your money.
Can I make a few comments?
Yep.
Okay. The question of the 1099 has been coming up for years. Don't do it, okay? We've had cases come to us at CSCA Voice, which we really can't help with, but they've approached us with these huge fines and what am I going to do, et cetera, et cetera. It's your assistant is an employee, okay? You've got to have the workman's comp, and I'm pleased to announce that starting in January, if you're a member of CSCA Voice, you can join our safety group, which we're establishing. And you can get a 20% discount on your workman's comp.
Wow.
However, you have to be a member of CSCA Voice. Otherwise, you go out into the general market and purchase your workman's comp. Other comment I want to make is we also recently joined up with Capcom, which is credit union here in the Albany area. However, as a member of CSCA Voice, you can join Capcom statewide. They have a network where you walk into a credit union someplace else in the state that doesn't have a Capcom outlet or a site, and you'll be treated just like you're a customer of that particular credit union. It does have online banking, all right? So you can bank with Capcom all across the state just by going on your computer. And I do have to say that I've been a member since 1997, and it's been quite a good experience in comparison to some of the other banks I've dealt with in the past. They have low interest credit cards, low interest auto loans, no fee checking, and they have the financial services division. So if you're looking for a place to start setting up your retirement accounts, again, as a CSCA Voice member, you can go to Capcom and say, I want to talk about setting up a retirement fund. What do you got? So I just wanted to mention those two things so that everybody is aware of them.
Great. Terrific. That's good news. So, some more questions. Can I use the grant money for back pay? I haven't been paying myself because of low enrollment. It doesn't matter what your income is now. It doesn't matter if you haven't paid yourself or earned any money really in the past. You can take all or part of the grant money for yourself now, going forward. You don't pay yourself back because it's all yours now. You can just keep it. If I want to go from a corporation back to a sole proprietor, is that possible without getting into trouble? Yes. You simply go back to the Secretary of State's office where you originally filed your corporation papers, and they'll give you a form to fill out to dissolve the corporation, and now you're back to being a sole proprietor. So it's done all the time. My husband is an official assistant and helps if I have a doctor's appointment. I do not pay him. Is this a problem? No, it's a good idea not to pay him. If you pay him, you'll have to withhold Social Security tax. He'll need to get workers' compensation insurance. So don't pay him. Think of some other way to reward him. How much does a bank ask to start a CD? Boy, I don't know. You can start a CD with probably $100 or, not much. How much to start a short-term bond fund? Again, I don't know exactly, but it's not very much money at all. $1,000 or less. Okay. Is it okay to use a savings account as a retirement? Well, a savings account is going to earn you right now less than 1% in a bank, right? If you have all your money in a retirement in a savings account and it's sitting there for 10, 20, 30 years, the problem is that inflation is a lot more than what you're earning as interest in a bank account. And so over time, your money is going to be worth less when you retire. So it is not a good idea to put all your money in a savings account, or even the majority of the money in a savings account for your retirement. You need to put some of it in an IRA And you want to, so I didn't say this before, for any of the IRAs, you have options of where to invest the money. You can take lower risks. You can put money in a money market fund for an IRA, and you're not going to earn very much interest. You can put it in some bond funds. You're going to earn a little more interest. You can put it in stock funds, and you're going to earn even more interest. The more risk you take, stocks are a lot more risky than a money market fund. But over time, you're going to earn more money in the stock market. So we want to look at long-term, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, even after you retire. And at least half of your money should be in stocks to take advantage of the higher rate of return over many years. Stocks go up and down, so people get nervous about that. But over the long run, they're going to earn you more money than bond funds or money market accounts or bank savings accounts. Don't put your money in stock funds unless you understand what you're doing. And that's what I've written about in my book and on my website. There's a lot more to say about that. And it sounds like if you're a member of the union, you can get access to this bank that has some financial planning services that can help you, educate you about that. Life insurance is not a retirement plan. Life insurance is for people that you care about will get money after you die. It's not something to invest for retirement. You can invest in funds that have both insurance and retirement in the same fund. In my opinion, that's not a good idea because the fees are too high. If you need life insurance, buy life insurance, but don't buy life insurance on together with retirement savings. Keep them separate. As an S corporation, I have to put enrollment money into my bank account. Yes. And then I can transfer it into a retirement account. Yes. Will filing for the SBA forgiveness impact getting a future loan? In other words, if you have a loan through the SBA, will that make it harder for you to get another loan? No. The SBA loan is forgivable. You don't have to pay it back, so it won't impact your ability to get another loan. If you start contributing to an IRA at age 60, what is the amount you can put in a year? The same amounts that I've been describing so far. It doesn't matter how old you are in terms of what you can contribute. Can you open an IRA for your children? Only if your children are earning money. So, hiring your own younger children to work in your business or to have them, they're cutting the lawn or doing something and they're earning some money, now you can start contributing to their IRA. You can contribute to a simple and a Roth IRA and put the maximum amount in both. $13,500 into a simple IRA, $6,000 into a Roth. That's $19,500. Can you have more than one IRA? Yes, you can. But if you have more than one Roth IRA, you can still only contribute a maximum of $6,000 a year. If you can have more than one regular IRA, but the maximum you can contribute is $6,000 a year. If you have a regular IRA and a Roth IRA, the maximum you can contribute is a total of $6,000 a year. If you're making too much for a Roth IRA, can you contribute to a traditional IRA and then convert it to a Roth? Yes. You can roll over money from a regular IRA into a Roth IRA. When you do that, you're going to pay tax on the interest that fund has earned. And then it's now in a Roth IRA and you'll never pay tax on it after that. You're saving for 12 years. I'll be 75 in 12 years. Can I do an IRA for 12 years? Yes. Yes. It's still a tax benefit to you, no matter how old you are. So yes, 12 years is still a long time. If you're married but legally separated, can you qualify for a regular IRA? Yes, you can. Okay, I need to talk about Social Security and I'll come back to these questions. Social Security. One of the biggest financial decisions you'll make in your life is when to start claiming Social Security. So we need to understand a little bit about how Social Security works. You can start claiming Social Security as early as age 62. Your full retirement age is either age 66 or 67. Now, you may be older than age 62 and still working. And you're thinking, maybe I should claim Social Security before my full retirement age. Maybe you want to do that because you're hurting financially now. You've lost children. You're not making a lot of money. You need more money. You're eligible for Social Security. Why not take it? Well, if you earn more than $18,960 profit this year and claim Social Security before your full retirement age, your benefit will be slightly lower. Now, maybe that's still what you want to do, but you just need to realize you're not going to get quite as much from Social Security. Once you reach your full retirement age, they'll start paying you back that lost benefit over a number of years. So eventually you'll get the money back, but it'll hurt you in the short run. Once you reach your full retirement age, you can earn as much money as you want, and it will not reduce your Social Security benefit. Well, when should you start claiming Social Security? For most people, ideally at age 70. The longer you wait to claim Social Security benefits, the more benefit you're going to get. So between the age of 62 and 70, your benefit is going to go up for each year that you wait. Between your full retirement age and age 70, your benefit will go up by about 8% a year. That's a lot. So although there is an incentive to wait between the age of 62 and your full retirement age, there's a much bigger incentive to wait for those last few years. Now, maybe you can't wait till age 70. Okay, but you should understand the significance of waiting. I strongly recommend that before you take your Social Security benefit, if you haven't already, is to take these two steps. First, go to the Social Security website and create your own account if you haven't already, and look at your annual Social Security statement. It will tell you how much you can expect to get from Social Security at age 62, your full retirement age, and age 70. These numbers are based on the assumption that the amount of money you earned last year will be the same amount each year until you reach age 62, your full retirement age, and age 70. So if your income is going to be going up, you'll see your benefit goes up each year. Your Social Security benefit is based on the highest 35 years of earnings over your life. And your statement from Social Security will show you for each year how much money you earn. And if in 2009 9, your statement says 0 income, but you know that you worked that year. You need that fixed now. You need to contact Social Security now to find out what happened, because that could impact and lower your overall Social Security benefit. Next, you want to go to this website, opensocialsecurity.com. It's a free online calculator. You'll put in your age, how much Social Security will say that you'll get at your full retirement age, and it'll tell you the best month and year you and your spouse should start claiming Social Security. Now, my wife and I were shocked by what we saw when we used this calculator. My wife is 4 years younger than me. Our plan had always been we would wait until I'm 70 and she would be 66, and we'd both start claiming Social Security that year. But the calculator said my wife should claim Social Security earlier than age 66. And at that time, I could start claiming half of her benefit as a spousal benefit. Then when I got to be age 70, I could still claim my full benefit. I wouldn't lose anything, but I would get half of her benefit for a number of years. Her benefit would be a little bit lower since she's claiming it earlier than age 66, but the amount that I'm getting is a lot more than she's losing. And we had no idea. This is a surprise to me. I can't explain why we were entitled to a spousal benefit for me. I went to a financial planner and I said, is this correct? And she said, yes. But I wanted to make sure. So I sat down in a room with a Social Security person. I said, is this correct? This is a big deal. And they said, yes. So that's what we signed up for. Social Security is complicated. I can't tell you how it's going to work in your situation. Maybe you're divorced. Maybe your spouse has died. Maybe you have children who are disabled. This impacts how much you could get from Social Security. So I don't have all the answers for that. That's why I say, go to this calculator. And then based on that, talk to a financial planner, talk to Social Security, just to make sure. Most people don't understand the consequences of when they're claiming Social Security. And it can make such a big difference that I think this is important for everybody to do. All right. Before I go to the last section, let me just try to catch up. Is it better to pay off a credit card in full or sometimes carry a balance? Someone told me by paying off your bill, it doesn't look good on your credit rating and that I should carry a balance. No, in my opinion, no. I'm not your financial planner. But why would you pay more interest than you have to? No, I always pay off, my wife and I always pay off our credit cards in full. We have a very, very high credit rating. I mean, I cannot see any benefit of carrying a balance. It doesn't benefit you. Whoops, sorry. Go ahead. You can take the money from the stabilization grant and pay yourself. Once you pay yourself, you can make the maximum contribution if you want to a regular IRA, Roth IRA, simple IRA, SEP IRA, or your spouse can contribute more to his 401k plan, and you have more money that you paid yourself that you can use for family expenses. So you can maximize out contributions to any IRA with the stabilization grant. All right. The Savers Credit is a federal tax credit. It'll show up on your tax return. There's a special form to fill out, and go to my website and search Savers Credit, and it explains the form and how to do it. Where can you get workers' compensation? Contact your insurance agent now. Your homeowners or liability insurance agent or car insurance agent. Contact them. They can hook you up with workers' comp, or starting next year, you can get it through the union. I have a Roth IRA. It doesn't seem to grow too quickly. Should I roll it over to Vanguard and manage it myself? That's a hard question because it depends on where you've invested the money. So if you want to contact me, get your statement out so you'll see where the money's invested, and then I can advise you whether that's whether you can expect a higher return or not based on where you've invested the money. So it's not, it doesn't matter whether it's, let's see, Vanguard has many, many options. So there's just not one fund to put into Vanguard. So I can give you further advice if you contact me directly. In order to qualify for Social Security, you must have paid into Social Security at least 10 years. So if you're too old, if you can't work for 10 years in this country, you won't qualify to get anything from Social Security, unfortunately. All right. How do you sign up for the voice contact? Ed, how do they contact CSEA voice? We'll pick that up at the end.
I'll get back to you in just.
Okay. Do you have to get workers' comp for volunteers? In New York, yes. New York has strict rules about this. So if you have volunteers coming and helping you out, New York says you have to get workers' comp for them. We had a situation where a provider's mother came over to help her out in her home. She didn't pay her mother, but her mother was there with the kids, and she got in trouble because she didn't have workers' compensation insurance for her mother, who she wasn't paying. Wow. And that's, workers' comp is no joke in New York. Okay. What payroll system do I prefer? I don't recommend any. The one that's been around for a long time that works with small businesses, one employees, ADP, Automated Data Processing. That one has been around for a long time. What kind of interest are IRAs paying this year? It depends on where you've invested the money. If you invested the money last year in the stock market, you made 15 or 20%. Stock market went crazy last year. If you invested in a money market fund last year, you made maybe 1%. If you invested in bond funds, it's all different depending on where you put the money. So there's no guarantee of any amount. You just want at least half of it in some stock funds, other half in bond funds or other kinds of funds that I don't have time to explain in detail.
I'm going to give the number, Tom.
Yep.
Okay, to contact voice, the number is 877-483-2732. And the email is voice, VOICE, at CSEAinc.org, O-R-G.
Okay. Somebody, it's a stabilization grant forgivable. It's no, it's taxable income. It's taxable income. If you spend it on something, deduct those expenses. Forgiven. You don't have to pay it back. It's a grant, not a loan. Somebody said they applied for the stabilization grant and they spent stuff for their daycare, and then the grant was denied. Boy, I have no idea why that happened. If you want to call me, maybe we can talk about it, but I have no idea what the circumstances are for that. If you're a corporation, but you're 100% the owner, can you take the grant and put it into another account for yourself? Well, if you're a corporation and you're the owner, the corporation is paying you a salary and they're paying payroll taxes on the salary. If you want to get the grant money for yourself, the corporation just has to pay you more salary. And then you're going to pay tax on that. So that's how you got to go through the payroll process to pay yourself as a corporation. As a single member LLC, am I required to make contributions for my assistant in a simple IRA? It depends on how long the person has worked for you and how much they earn. So if you go to my website and search simple IRA, it will give that details for that. If you don't want to have to make any contribution to an employee's IRA, then set up a regular IRA for yourself or a Roth IRA for yourself. And as I said, I like the Roth IRA. Is the simple and the traditional IRA the same? No, they're two different things. They have two different qualifications. Traditional IRA, you may have to earn less than a certain amount to qualify, and you can only contribute $6,000. A simple IRA, it doesn't matter how much you make, you can still contribute up to $13,500. So they're different. The tax issues are the same, but the amounts you can contribute are very different. Yeah, can a person who's 70 and just work for 2 years claim Social Security? No, you'd have to work for 10 years. Now, if you're married, you can get half of your spouse's benefit, whichever is higher. So there's a possibility of claiming Social Security from your spouse if you are married. And that gets complicated, and I can't explain all the details there. That's why you want to go onto that website, which will advise you about that. Somebody said they've been receiving survivor benefits after their spouse died. I was told when I apply for Social Security for myself, they'll cut off my husband's benefit. Is that true? Well, probably yes, if the amount that you're going to get from Social Security for yourself is more than what you would get from the survivor benefits, then you wouldn't get the survivor benefit anymore. You can't get both at the same time. And when you apply for Social Security after your spouse died can make a difference. Are you at your full retirement age? Are you at age 70? That can make a difference in how much you can get from Social Security. As self-employed, how do I pay into Social Security? By filing your taxes at the end of the year. There's a form that you fill out called Form 1040 SE. S as in Elizabeth, E is in Elmer. Form 1040 SE. That will tell you how much you owe in Social Security tax. That tax gets added on to any income tax you owe when you file your taxes at the end of the year. That's how you get credited for Social Security payments. Let's see. I know we're running over time. Let me just see if I can catch some more questions. I'm 58, been working for 29 years, would like to retire, but I don't have a 401k or any type of investment, but I want to retire in 2 years. Well, it sounds like you can't retire in 2 years because you'd be 60. You can't get Social Security until you're 62. And if you haven't saved anything for retirement, yes, you could start saving for 2 years, but that's not going to earn you a lot of interest. And so now you need to say, well, what am I going to live on after 2 years? Does your spouse have enough money? I don't know. You're in trouble if you're single and you don't have any investments, and you got to wait 4 years before you can get Social Security. Can a domestic partner qualify for Social Security? No. You can't. A domestic partner can't get Social Security benefits of the other partner unless they're married or been divorced, or the partner dies and you've been married. Okay. I have business liability insurance. Do I also need workers' compensation insurance? Well, not for yourself. If it's just you, business liability insurance is what protects you. You do not need workers' compensation for yourself. If you have employees, you definitely need workers' compensation for employees, and you need the liability insurance to protect your business. My husband volunteered for 20 years. He's worked for 20 years. Can he collect Social Security? He didn't pay in the last 20 years. You only earn Social Security credits if you're paying Social Security tax. If your husband works somewhere else and claims Social Security benefits, and he qualifies by working somewhere else for at least 10 years, he's going to get Social Security based on those other years that he worked. When he worked for you for 20 years without being paid, he's not adding anything to his Social Security benefit. He's not getting anything more from Social Security just by working for you and not being paid. If you had paid him over 20 years and paid in Social Security tax for him, he would have gotten a higher Social Security benefit. All right. If I pay myself with a grant, can I take out the tax money I owe from there? Yes. You're paying yourself $10,000. Now you can set aside some of that for your taxes. Yes. You can't use the grant money directly for your taxes. You pay yourself first, then you can use the grant money for taxes. All right, last comments here, and I'll just be very quick. Setting financial goals. We talked about this a little bit. I think it's always a good idea to sit down with your spouse, your partner, with yourself, and look ahead. And let's say we're looking ahead to 2022 and say to yourself, what are my financial goals? What are some things I want to try to achieve financially next year? And here's a list of some things that you might have as goals. You'd list them and you'd pick one or two that you think you could do. And then the year begins. At the end of the year, you look back to see how well you did in meeting the financial goals that you set. Maybe you said, we're going to try to pay off our credit cards, and we're going to put aside 2 weeks of an emergency fund. Okay, that was your goal. At the end of the year, how well did you do? Well, we paid off 80% of our credit card, and we only got 1 week of an emergency fund. Okay, you didn't meet the goal. Okay, not a problem. Now set goals for 2023. Measure the goal, set goals, measure the goal, keep going. People who write down goals and measure, see how well they did, and then set goals again are much more likely to reach them than people who don't. So I would urge you to make financial planning a more important part of your life. And you can do better when you plan ahead. Don't be overwhelmed by all the financial goals that you might need. Don't be overwhelmed by the fact that you might not have saved any money, or you just, you're in bad shape now. You try to do a little bit better each year. You make some progress each year. Don't let spending now make it harder for you to save to reach these financial goals. That's why I stressed saving is so important when we started. Reduce your spending. Reduce your spending. That's what I want to say. Caring for children is obviously your top priority, not dealing with money, money, money. The non-financial rewards of doing childcare are more important than money. Some providers will never make a whole lot of money. Others are going to do very well financially. But regardless, success, happiness is really not directly related to how much money you have. So I want people not to lose the focus on what's really important. Here is my contact information again. Here is my website where I have a lot of information on money management and retirement. You'll see that on the home page. And there's details about all the IRA plans, where to invest your money, Social Security. There's a lot of information there. So I urge you to take a look at that. And let's just see here. As a provider, do I recommend to take the emergency disaster loan through the SBA? Only if you need it. I mean, you're going to get a lot of money from the stabilization grant that you don't, that's not a loan. If you really need the loan, you're still paying interest on that idle loan. And maybe you need it for some big project, then okay. But don't do that unless the stabilization money is not enabling you to reach a financial goal. All right, is it too late to start an IRA for this year? No, it is not. And so I want to stop there because I want to respect people's time. I know we ran over. I know for many people, this is not something that they probably have heard a lot about before. So you may need to take some time to educate yourself about this. You'll have access to the recording of this webinar, as well as access to the PowerPoint slides so that you can look at them later if you'd like. I'm happy to try to answer your questions after today. You work very hard, and I appreciate that. And so thank you for taking the time today to listen. And that's all I have to say. I don't know if Ed or anybody else wants to say anything.
Just everybody enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you for coming.
Okay. Thanks again,
Thank
everybody.
you,
I'm sorry I couldn't answer everybody's questions, but please don't hesitate to contact me later. Thank you very much.
And
Thank
once
you,
again,
Tom.
thank you, Tom. Yes.
Thank you, John, as well. Appreciate your interpretation. Thank you very much.